So there are generally three types of technologically literate people in the world. And one of the things we explore today is which one are you? So my name's Richard Crawford Small. I'm the founder of iConsult Software. And what I'm going to talk to you about today, if I may, is looking at how you can use technology to develop your businesses, how you can kind of jump ahead of this industry, of actually probably most of healthcare, to be honest, and looking at embracing the technologies that your patients have already embraced so enthusiastically and help it to drive your business forward. And also, at the end, there'll be a Q&A session, all things tech, anything that's on your mind. I can't think of anything that makes me happier than talking about gadgets, technology, and how I can help you to solve any problems that you've got. So, who here would describe themselves as a technophobe? Put your hand up. Just a couple? 3, 4? Okay. Do you have a smartphone? iPhone? Yeah? Do you have a tablet? Yeah? Are you on Facebook? No? Yeah? You're not technophobes. You're not. Technophobes would have none of that. You know, it's carrier pigeons all the way. The truth is, most of us actually are techno-literate. You know, we have, and the great thing about technology and the great thing about iPhones and iPads is it's made it much, much more accessible. So back in the days when we all started off with things like Windows 95, it was an absolute nightmare. All the designs were all over the place. No one could navigate it, and everyone had a huge fear of technology. Enter Steve Jobs, enter the iPhone, everything becomes much, much simpler. So this is where your patients exhibit. This is where they live. And the next generation along are what we call techno-fused. So they were born after the creation of the internet. I know that makes us all feel old, but there were people born after the creation of the internet who are now in their 20s. And they've always got some sort of technological device attached to their hands. You know who they are. They're the ones who walk into you at the train station because they're constantly walking, looking down at their iPhones, you know, getting in the way. And that's the next generation we've got. And thinking about it, what technotype are your patients? So would you agree that a lot of your patients who come into the clinics, so who currently uses paper-based processes to record the information in their clinics? Just put your hands up. Yeah, probably the majority of you. But the majority of your patients will probably have an iPad in their bag. So there's a complete disconnect in terms of what they're expecting from you. They walk in, put their iPad away, you give them a paper form to fill out. Doesn't connect. Because this is the reality we live in. This is, you know, to say life through a lens, it's life through an iPad. And that's effectively where we are. So we need to learn how to harness this technology and use it to communicate to our customers better. This is a journey I've been on as well, which is obviously why I'm here talking to you. So, a little stat is 75% of iPhone users take their phone to bed. Hands up who here has the phone on the windowsill or right next to them when they go to bed. Yeah. It does make you laugh when you think of it this way, but if you think about this little gadget here, it's completely transformed the way we communicate. You know, do we talk? Yeah, of course we talk. But how much information do you get through this every single day? If you think about it from that perspective. Who gets BBC news feeds, Facebook feeds, you know, everything comes through your iPhone. How many of you do SMS marketing to your patients? Just 1, 2, handful. Okay, great. So, question I'll ask is, SMS is great, but it has certain limitations. So if we're thinking that this is how we communicate with our patients, this is how we communicate with the world, it's all app-driven. So 90% of the processes you go through on your iPhone or iPad or Samsung, Android are apps. So it might lead you to the question, well, do I need an app? Do you need an app for your business? So hands up here who actually currently has an app that they use for their business. Look around, no one. Does that not seem strange to you that in healthcare, in this industry, if you consider that 75% of you sleep with your iPhones, we already know that, you know, a huge amount of information is taken from apps. None of you here have one to help communicate with your businesses. So question, do I need an app? Well, the answer is going to be quite vague. It depends, and it entirely depends on what you want to do with it, what problem you need to solve. So, example of some of the problems in healthcare: patient recruitment, patient retention, patient return. So from my consultancy experience, These are the three kind of big buckets that everyone has challenges with. Can't get enough patients, retention rate's low, or you want them to come back. Now, the challenge, again, with all of this is how do you communicate? Because you communicate to each group very, very differently. Do you agree? You know, the messages you'll give to attract someone to your patient is a different message than you'll give someone to come back for a repeat treatment or to introduce a new procedure. So how do we communicate? And also through the communication, it's adding value. You know, broadcast messaging, like SMS, you know, with the whole PPI, you know, how many messages do you get a day from companies offering to sort your PPI out? It's just broadcast messaging, there's no thought to it. That's not adding value to the customer experience. What adds value to the customer experience is engagement, getting them engaged as part of the whole process. So 75% of us sleep with our phones. I consider that to be the most valuable piece of real estate in the marketing world. And the way we communicate is SMS, which, you know, a few of you do. But another way, if you have an app, is push notifications. So we're going to talk a little bit about the sort of technological aspects of it and how this all works so you can understand it. So when you go away from here, if you do think about actually wanting to build an app or getting one built, you've got some insights into how it works. So push notifications. So SMS is great. It's a fire and forget. 94% reading rate, fantastic. Push is if you have the app downloaded onto your phone or your device, then you activate notifications and it comes up on your screen. Hugely engaging. But the most engaging is what's called in-app messaging. So this is where if you design your app, you can create a huge amount of rich content, data-rich content, to really engage. So these examples here, it's just an offer. This one, a little bit more information, but this, if you can't see that, update available, update today, link into the website, huge amount of information. So it's a very, very engaging medium. What else could your app do? Well, if you built one, it could provide information on your procedures, information on your clinic, information on you to this very valuable piece of real estate. Booking. How many of you have got online booking forms for your patients? So is that where the inquiry form, or they can actually physically make an appointment with you? Physically make an appointment with you. Yeah, so why not actually have that on here? They can do it through a website, but sending them a link to an app saying, please make a booking now, go straight through, boom, 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 made the appointment. Very, very quick, very, very simple. And again, engagement, likes, you know, all these things, you know, Twitter feeds, social media interaction, getting them engaged, getting them part of your brand story, for want of a better phrase, and communicate to them much more effectively. You can also use it to integrate your finances. So huge development from companies like PayPal, Huddlebuy, iZettle, Square, on enabling iPads, enabling technologies to take payment right at the point of interaction. So I always go on about it. One of my favorite, weirdly, buying experiences is with Apple. I sound like a complete nerd when I say it, but you go into the shop and you pay right there. You know, it's a really intimate interaction. It's far more intimate than often going into a cosmetic clinic and having to pay the receptionist behind a desk. So if you're sat there, you've got your iPad, you've done the consultation, bang, 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 and you can take the payment there. It completes the whole process. So can an app help? Yeah, so for recruitment, I actually think SMS is a better medium because you need to spread it out. You need their mobile address, you've got their mobile phone numbers, you've got all the information you need. To have an app, obviously they need to download it, so they're already part of your process or part of your clinic. You can scan a QR code, they can download the app, and it creates a conversation. But I think for the real return and where we're looking at the future and what's happening with the companies that you buy from is in-app engagement. So booking before you go to a restaurant, paying, looking at the menu, all these sort of things that we're starting to do now. Doesn't it make sense to start thinking about how you can incorporate some of these strategies and technologies into your own practices? But when you do it, a word of warning, an app is not a website. So I'm about to share with you in about 2 minutes the journey I went on in creating iConsult. So I'd never built an app before, and I learned a huge amount of information, a lot of experiences in doing it. So I'm going to share with this, and hopefully this will save you some money, also a lot of time and a lot of anguish. App is not a website. So very early days of the internet, if anybody remembers it, 1998, all websites were horrible. They were horrible. All of them were horrible. So you could have a bad website. Now, we're in the early stages, we're still in the early conceptual stages of app developments, and they are not horrible. Apple keep a very, very close tight rein on the quality of apps. And this is taken straight from their submission guidelines. The things to pull out, it's cobbled together. First practice, you can't make poor quality apps and expect them to get onto the App Store. So what I'm saying is, instantly you're thinking, yeah, there is a cost. There's a cost associated with app development that you cannot ignore. So that's why you have to be certain that it's the right thing for you to do. Zombies is another term that's being used for apps that have not been updated. So apps have been around since like 2007. Some of them were built, didn't make any money, and were just left. Obviously, the operating systems have evolved, and now they don't work. So if you don't invest in them, they're just going to sit, float around the ether, causing all sorts of trouble. So with that in mind, do you really want to make one? Anybody here still have been thinking about making an app or interested in the process? So I'll just give you a quick whistle stop on how to do it. So planning. The first line is the most important line. The quality of the app will reflect the quality of your planning. Do not go into it thinking, I can just do this really, really quickly. You can't. You'll spend a fortune and it won't work. So first thing you've got to think about is same with everything in business. Business planning. What is the problem you want to solve? So retention. Are you having problems rebooking patients? Are you not getting enough traffic through your website? Drill right down to think, okay, why am I building this? What is the one problem I really need to fix? Who is your audience? So are you going to communicate to all of your patients? Well, no, that's just not the thing to do. You need to communicate to your best spending patients, your highest value patients, and get them engaged in the whole process. What's the thing that will motivate users to download your app? You can't just put it out there and say, okay, everybody come to my app, which is, I think, what a lot of people thought was going to happen. Make an app, put it out there, everybody will come and I'll make millions. Doesn't work. How are you going to generate them? What's the marketing plan behind getting them to download your app? What content will it incorporate? Is it going to be off your website? Are you going to create any specific content? Are you going to have video? Are you going to have links to other websites? What is it going to do? How is it going to add value? How's it going to have that rich experience? And what will it look like? Very important. What is it going to look like? It's not just going to be like a website. It needs to have that visual language that apps have. So this is the development process, and I recommend you kind of follow it. Is first thing, design it. Think about all the problems. Then you put together your what's called user stories. So how is it going to work? What's it going to do? Because if you're communicating to a developer, they need to fully understand what's in here. Otherwise, they can't build it. Test it. Is the idea going to work? Bounce it off your colleagues, bounce it off your family and friends. Does the business model make any sense at all? And then create what's called the minimum viable product. So it's the smallest feature set that you think we'll need. Don't go out and build, right, it's going to do this, 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 and this. It's fantastic. Narrow it right down to 2 or 3 things that, that you actually want the system to actually do. And so test. So you do the build phase, then you test it. Send it out into the marketplace. Get feedback from the people who are using it. Ask your patients, ask your customers, what do they think of it? Are they going to use it? If not, why? If they are using it, why? We tend to forget about those sorts of things, is positive feedback. What's great about it? What do you like about it? And then take those feedback and put it back into the app development, build another version, and improve it, and constantly improve it. So what I was going to talk to you about is the technologies that you'll develop an app for. So who's got an Android phone? Samsung, any Nexus, something like that? Put your hands up so I can see you. Hi. Higher. Thank you. Who has iPhone? Yeah. 70% of the UK market is iPhone. So this is one of the things you need to consider if you decide to develop an app is, do you build it for Android? Do you build it for iPhone? I built mine for iPhone. There are 3 different technologies. There's HTML5, there's Android, and there's iOS. And they all have their relative strengths and they all have their relative weaknesses. HTML5 is basically, it's like a website that's been put into a little wrapper and put onto the App Store. They're cheap. I think if you're going to go into it for the first time, it's the technology I would look at. So remember that, HTML5, if you ever talk to a developer and think, that's a good starting point. Because one, it's relatively cheap to do, and secondly, it's portable. So you can use it on lots of different devices. You could use it on a website, you could use it on an iPhone, you could use it on an Android phone, all at the same time. It's quite quick to develop because you're not actually having to do really heavy coding. The downsides to it are they're not as fast as what we call native apps. So they're not as fast as apps that are built in specifically for Android or for iOS. You can't do push notifications through them. So when we talked about the actual communications to clients, you can't really do those. And the third thing is familiarity. A lot of developers shy away from it because they like to use iOS, like to use sorts of things. Android, 62% global market share for an operating system. You know, it is by far the most prevalent operating system around. So you think, well, lots of people have it, surely I should build it for that. Yeah, maybe. Lots of hardware options. So, you know, Tesco Huddle, anyone got one? No, good. You know, there's lots of different systems and some things you can buy. Samsung, Nexus, you know, Tesco Huddle, Argos have got one, all run on Android. And they're cheap, let's be frank. They are cheaper than iPads. Negative sides, they're really difficult to develop for because, as you probably know, if you've got your iPhones, Apple force you to upgrade your phone. iOS 7, people like it, they don't like it, but you've probably all got it because Apple forced the development. With Android, there are versions of Android that were built in 2010 that 30% of the market still use. So if you're a developer, how do you develop for systems that are 4 years old versus what's new? It's really difficult to do. Second thing is, I think because there's no controls over the Android marketplace, not like the App Store where you have the submission guidelines, you get a lot of spammy apps, you get a lot of things that don't work very, very well. And as I say, you know, it's very, very difficult to design for. My favorite is iOS. Apple is still the biggest vendor, even though you hear lots of noise about them being market shrinking. They only make one device, you know, the iPhone, well, two devices, sorry, the iPhone and the iPad. And the sales of those are still growing. Everyone still has them. The brand, let's face it, if you're looking to work with, you know, to have an app and using it in your clinic, the first thing they see is if you take a photograph of them with your iPad, is the Apple logo on the back of it. So if you're going for a cheap tablet, the first thing you're communicating to your patient is that you are cheap. That's not a great message to give. And stability and performance, because Apple control the process so rigorously, the apps work. They won't accept apps that crash. They don't accept apps that perform poorly. They don't accept apps that don't look good. So you get a really good quality of process. The negative side of things, completely inflexible. Try getting hold of anybody to help you out. It just doesn't happen. You send an email to them, 5 days later they get back with the wrong answer. So I think there's a polarizing aspect to it. People think, well, you know, it's either Apple or Android. There's an element for both of them. And yeah, the devices have a higher cost. So the final thing to look at is, who do you get to build your app? Now, you can go in the UK, or you can do what we call offshore. Now, little aside, I learned this experience through my original app developer, a guy called Tarka Leherpinier, who helped me build the original version of iConsult. I forgot that not only was he an app developer, he was also a polar explorer. So halfway through the process, he decided to up sticks and walk across the South Pole, walk across Antarctica. 4 months. So I had no developer. So I had to learn how to deal with an offshore developer. And offshore, I mean, basically coding talent in Russia, India, Pakistan, China. The labor market's obviously cheaper. You get a very good quality job, but you have to be familiar with the process. You have to be prepared to project manage it and manage it quite closely. You know, it's the same process as if you were building a house offshore. Do you get a project manager at the house, or do you do it yourself? You have to know the process. And the final thing is also keep this in your mind, is at every stage of this process, you have to be thinking about how you add value to your patients. How do you add value to the experience? Don't just build it as a vanity tool, build it actually as a product that works. So where does this lead us in the future? Well, we talked about, you know, how you can communicate with the patients, but certain things to look out for are video consultations. Now, obviously, with the whole thing around remote prescribing, you obviously can't prescribe the treatment over video link, but video conferencing is, with Skype getting better, with FaceTime, that first initial engagement with the patient through an app, your own app, why not? You can create an app where it says, you know, would you like to contact the doctor? You schedule a time, bang, up they come, and you can talk to them. Why not? You know, you could look at the face, you could actually start to do that initial consultation. So when they come in, your time is halved, but also it begins that engagement process. And if you think about people who currently offer this service, outside the US, I don't know anybody in this marketplace who does that. Wearable technologies. So I'm not sure how this will affect cosmetics or aesthetic injectable, but things like Google Glass. Keep an ear out and an eye out on those kind of technologies, about how wearable technologies will enable you to communicate with your patients. Social media integration. Now, this is a really interesting one in terms of, obviously, healthcare, because you've got confidentiality. But the line is starting to draw ever closer, where you have this techno-fused younger generation who live their life in social media now starting to come into anti-aging clinics, and they live their life through social media. So they're there, and also you guys as well. I mean, hands up who's got a Facebook page for their business? A few of you. Twitter? Yeah. So this integration, you can use apps to integrate, because if it's an app and it's your own closed personal process, doesn't go to the outside world, there's a slightly different set of rules around communication. And transparency. One thing that these things do is they just make you more open, I believe. They make you more accessible to your patient base. And as a result, your communication improves, and as a result, your business revenues will improve. So, thank you very much for listening. That was, I hope that was of some use to you. I'd like to open the floor up to questions.
I know this can vary an awful lot depending on the quality and quantity of it, but what sort of cost basis are you looking
what
at?
Sort of costs? Okay, so in terms of development costs, you're looking anywhere between, for a UK-based iOS developer, you're looking anywhere between £50 to £100 an hour, maybe including VAT. And just to give you a bit of an insight in terms of development time, so to develop a reasonably well-spec'd app, I think you're probably looking at about 100 to 150 hours. So, to give you a bit of an idea, for an HTML5 app, half the price, half the time, which is why I'm saying if you're taking the first step into it, HTML5 is probably the right route to go down in terms of getting the development side. So, if you're going to do it and try and incorporate everything that I've discussed, I'd budget for around anywhere between 5,000 and 7,000. Okay. Any other questions? No? Well, great. Thanks very much for coming to see me today. I'm on stand 65 if anybody wants to come and have a quick chat with me or a long chat or whatever, about bits and pieces. And I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you very much.